Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of NL Talks. Today, I'm going to interview Ed regarding how do you start a business and some of the more practical steps to do that. Hey, Ed. So, first question.
Hey, Colby.
How you doing?
I am good.
Today's Wednesday, right?
Correct.
Weather's been pretty good. Pretty good. I mean, yeah, it's been a little rainy, but I like the warmth, the humid warmth, like 60 degrees. Had the windows
Has it
down.
been 60? I haven't been out.
You should get out sometime. Yesterday was like mid 50s.
Yeah, it was raining all day, so
Yesterday wasn't. Do you have windows here?
I do.
That's good. All right, well, first question. Uh, what are the first practical steps when you start a business?
So the first thing you need to do is get the idea. And what I found a lot of people do is they try to come up with something super original or super complicated. And that's the wrong approach, in my opinion. Because to do anything super original or super complicated, you need a huge budget, which, unless you're already a serial entrepreneur and have a bunch of savings or money, it's going to be very difficult for you to pull together a budget. And there's two paths to go from there. You can also find investors, or you can try to do it yourself. I'd recommend, if it's your first business, to try to do it yourself, because if you have an investor, you're not going to know how to save money and do things in a scrappy way when you need to, and you're just going to blow your whole budget right away and most likely not be making enough by the time you run out of the funding. And then your job is going to be to just keep pitching the fundraisers to give you more money to keep the company going, rather than actually making money from the company, which I don't think is a good way to run a company. But once you have an idea of what you're doing and kind of the direction you want to go, I would first, before doing anything, is ask friends and family, like, do they think it's a good idea? Would they buy this product, or would they use this service? And from there, you can kind of get a gauge of, is this a completely terrible idea? And they could all be wrong as well, so it's not the best gauge. So you might want to expand and ask more people as well. But it's a good starting point for you to know, is this something I want to pursue? Is this something everybody totally disagrees with? And sometimes if everybody disagrees, that means it's something really cutting edge and good. So it's kind of a hard balance.
Yeah, I mean, regarding the ideas, I've heard two sides of it where it's like, one, if you do something like first to market, you have very specific and sometimes unique problems that most other companies may not have, that you may, like you're saying, funding is one of them, that you may not be prepared. If you're trying to break into a market and like kind of create your own, I mean, think of it like eBay, right? Creating the network effect of eBay, that is tough because you have to get the buyers and the sellers at the same time, right? Or else you're not going to have either of them.
That's also what everybody wants to do from the start.
It's so valuable if you can be a marketplace like that.
It is, but it's like the 1% of the 1% of those actually work. So without funding, it's impossible. Those things require a lot of marketing to do. Just what's it called? Campaigns where you're not selling anything, but you're just doing promotional material. There's like a name for it, but I've just slipped off my tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Outreach campaign? No.
Outreach?
Some
like brand building, or
yeah, just brand building campaigns. Because like eBay doesn't need to sell you something with their ads; they just need you to know about their product. And to build a marketplace like that, you just need brand awareness. That's what the campaign is. You need a lot of brand awareness campaigns because you need both sides. You need the sellers to join the program, and you need the buyers to join the program.
Same thing with Uber, Lyft, Airbnb.
Yes, they're all really simple ideas when you think about it, but they're incredibly difficult to pull off because they don't work unless you have balance on both ends of the market.
Yeah, and kind of to play off that point further, if your idea is something that already kind of exists, but you just know how to improve it, you have a huge benefits with that because you already know, okay, what are my competitors doing? They're all doing A, B, C, D, let's say, and then the rest is unique. So you already know kind of the pieces that work and then how to differentiate yourself beyond that. So then you can save a lot of money, and there's that benefit going into something that already kind of exists.
Also, it's important to know your intention. Is your intention to make a ton of money, or is it to be happy in life, or is it to do something else? If your intention is to be happy in life and you're just unhappy at your current job, 0.0.0.5% of the market, which is like 100K, might be all you really need. So you don't need to do anything differently. You just need to find 10 to 20 clients who like you specifically because it's just you,
Mm-hmm.
if that's the angle you want to go at, and just get a little bit of that market so that you can work for yourself for these clients instead of working for a huge company that you're not happy to work at. If your goal is to make a ton of money, then obviously that's too small picture for what you're trying to do. But it's a good starting point just to get enough money to kick off something bigger.
Yeah.
And it's good practice to just figure out how to manage these people, how to work with them. The approach I really like when starting a company is to tell or find a few clients. Don't try to pretend to be a bigger company and close them. Just tell them, you're my first client. I'd like to give you a discount and I'd like to learn this with you. And a lot of people are way more interested in that than actually hiring a big agency anyways. So that approach works really well. And then after like 5 or 20 or 5, 10, 20 clients of doing that, and you can slowly raise prices throughout. But then after the 20th one, you can actually just say you're a specialist because you've already worked with 20 people in the industry and you know every issue that will come up when you work on their project.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I remember there's a stage at your company where you wanted to grow the company, have more clients, but then your existing clients, you kind of had to say, hey, I'm not the one actually doing this anymore, but I'm overseeing it and I'm making sure the quality remains.
Yeah, so that was a stepping stone in the process. My goal was just to have enough money to pay myself at the beginning, so I didn't really care how I positioned myself. I was just trying to get more work coming in. But I did kind of brand myself as the company the whole time. But the people who specifically hired me, they were reaching out to me as a person, not to the company.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit of a gray area. I don't think I have that issue anymore. It was definitely an issue starting out, but it's not a bad approach to take. If you're the founder CEO and you don't have anybody working for you, there's no point in telling them there are people working for you and then you pretending you're the other people.
You just have like pseudonyms, like emailing back and forth.
Exactly, yeah. I think honesty is definitely the best approach. Most people prefer that. And if you get caught in that lie, you're going to lose that client most likely.
Oh, yeah. And it's a whole nother just like needless risk.
This also depends on what type of company you're building too. I'm specifically talking about an agency or a service-based business.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing a software or a SaaS or the marketplace, these are completely irrelevant because you wouldn't be catching clients for a SaaS company. I mean, you'd be catching clients, but they would be self-service. You wouldn't be talking with them or explaining stuff.
So to go back to the steps. So the next step was you're saying let's ask your friends and family. I would agree with that depending on what the product is and making sure that the people that you're talking to would actually be like in that target market, right? Because if let's say I'm discussing a SaaS product for like a business need, my dad who is kind of just works like a 9 to 5 corporate job, he may never deal with that and not know like, hey, this is actually a huge pain point that they have. I feel like it would be very important to find someone who would most likely have that pain point and then see, is the pain high enough to where you can justify the cost that I would have that would make it like, suitable.
I would honestly say asking your friends and family is just a gauge of the idea, but it's not a final decision. It's more of, is it worth pursuing? What kind of responses are you getting from people? And even if they're all negative, that might be your intention. Because if they're all like, no, this is stupid, you might be like, oh, I'm actually onto something because all these people don't like it. Or they might just be the complete opposite target audience of who you're trying to target. So them saying no means that the right target audience is going to say yes. But that would be step 2, is doing some light marketing and just finding some channels to reach out to the actual people you'd want to be selling to. And this can be really tricky if you're targeting enterprise level companies because it's going to be really hard to get a hold of anybody there, especially if you're that small. But if you're targeting small businesses, then it should be really simple for you to get a hold of somebody. And again, I would just lead with that honesty approach. Like, I'm starting a business. I see you're a business owner. I'm targeting you because of this reason. And I wanted to either provide value or work with you or do it for free because you're my first client or something like that. And that will get the ball rolling. That way you can kind of figure out if they're interested or not. And that first client can give you a lot of input on like which direction to go, what they like, what they don't like. Again, they're not the whole market, so don't fully rely on that, but they'll definitely point you in the right direction. And then based on their pain points, that's what I would do the next marketing campaign on. So if you work with them and you notice these are the 3 things you fixed for them, then maybe for the next people you reach out to, you tell them we fixed these pain points and see if they relate to it.
So you said marketing campaign. That's vague and a little broad. If you had, let's say, a limited budget, what kind of marketing campaign would you try first?
Door to door, like go to the business directly and say I live down the street, I'm starting a business, I'd like to have you as my first client, or I'm starting out a business, you're my first few clients, etc. That's a really cheap way. So when you're starting out and you want to keep the budget low, you're going to have to waste your time. There's no way it's either you waste money to save time or you waste your time to save money. So starting out, I would say you'd probably want to waste your time because you don't have any clients yet. So there's no time that you're going to be putting into managing the clients. Your whole time should be spent on getting more. So literally, if you're like targeting sports shops, just go to every sports store in the area, drive around. Pretty much any local business that fits who you're trying to target, go to them. It also helps you get over shyness and stuff like that because it's really bold to just walk into a business and try to sell them something. But if your offer is good enough, they'll bite on it. It's definitely a starting out strategy. I wouldn't recommend doing that if you're a more established company because nobody's going to want to talk to you if you're trying to just pitch them something directly at their business.
Mm-hmm.
Also, emails. Do like a personal email. Actually target people. Don't just make a list on Google and send everybody the same thing. Like look into their business, look at their site, try to like find if they have a pain point that you solve, and if you can target that pain point in the email, they'll be way more likely to respond. Again, that's a huge time consumer, and a lot of people will never read that email. So again, it's a lot of time wasted, but that is very effective if you put a lot of time into it.
Okay, so let's say you get your first client, right? How important is it to have like the logistics, the software to process payments, the kind of project management or sales software? Like is that something you should look into right away, or is that something where it's like use pen and paper at first or an Excel sheet and then grow into the software?
It depends on your budget again. If you are able to, I would try to go with the software approach straight up. Like if I was to start another business right now, I would set up everything correctly from the start because it becomes a huge headache when you need to migrate or move everything. But it's definitely not a priority when you're starting out. The priority is to A, get the client, and B, make sure you're the best possible service for that client. And if it's just you, waste extra time on it, stay up all night, make sure the product you deliver is actually the best in the market or the best to your capabilities. Obviously, if you're doing something like 3D video rendering, you're not going to be able to compete with really high-end companies because they have a lot of manpower and processing stuff. But you can definitely get close and just make sure it's the best product possible so that they refer you to more people.
So speaking of that, you can differentiate based on the product. You can differentiate based on customer service. What do you think is easiest to like differentiate in the beginning?
I guess I kind of went straight for quality, but I mean, some companies don't care about quality; they care about price. Like that's some brands' whole value proposition. Like Walmart is all about the cheapest possible option, not quality. Target's somewhere in the middle, and I don't know what the upper end like store would be, but
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think there are places that you and me have never been to.
Yeah.
But Target's like the higher quality one. So between Walmart and Target, I usually go to Target because I'd rather pay like $10 more for whatever I'm getting, but have a cart that doesn't have wheels that are falling off, have the staff be nice to me, all the stuff is organized, there's not a mess everywhere. So most people prefer that, especially if they're buying something for their business. So that's where I would lean towards. The value proposition is something you can pull off at the very beginning, because if you have no clients, getting one client is better than charging that client. So I would say you might want to lead with that starting out, but then you want to immediately switch it to more expensive value so you can actually start making a profit. That's something that I think a lot of people have an issue with, is raising their prices, because when you're selling the service as just you think of how many hours you need to spend on it. But when you sell it as a company, you're thinking the overhead plus paying the person plus paying the manager, that's all included in that hourly fee.
Marketing, development, growth.
Exactly. And you don't think about that stuff when you're starting out. So my advice is definitely to do as many free things as you can, but then immediately raise your price to like an industry average.
Because I remember when we were doing it a little earlier, it was like, oh, we're charging this. Like, this is a lot. Like, wow, this is crazy. And then you do all the math out, and we're like, oh, if we need to hire someone after taxes and all this other stuff, like, we're negative, actually. Like,
Yeah, it's definitely something that's really hard to calculate until you start having people and the overhead. But it is something that it's also a gray area because if you've quit your job and you're doing this full time, you need to make sales. So sometimes you'd rather lower the price but be able to pay bills.
yeah.
So I think the first step after that is to either get a recurring model or make sure you can pay your bills so that you're not lowering prices to close deals after that.
Yeah, or going after projects that may be a little outside the niche, and then you're kind of
That's a huge issue, yes. Because when it's just you have a lot of skills, you can figure it out. But when you hire people, they're not really willing to go outside of what you hired them for. So if you get projects that are outside their skill set, you either need to bring in a contractor or tell them to do it, and they might spend extra time on it, which will cost you more money. So that's definitely another key thing is make sure the service you do and the niche you picked stick with that. And don't expand it too soon. Expand it once it makes sense. I would say we're not ready to expand at all.
we're actually doing the opposite, where we're trying to cut down a
Yeah.
little bit, niche down.
That was definitely a mistake I made. I just accepted any project, but now we're trying to target specific people at the company and specific types of companies. We're still pretty broad in terms of who we work with, but if you're able to, like, say we're only working with flower shops and you target all the flower shops, again, it has to make sense. If the flower shops are only paying you like $100 a month, but it costs you $1,000,
Yeah.
obviously that's not the niche you should be going for, or you need to adjust accordingly.
And if there's only 10 flower shops in the area, and then
That's
you're now
also-
expand, it's like,
Yes, that's also an issue. What I found with that though is usually there's way more than you'd expect.
yeah.
So, and with flower shops, even if there's 10 in the area, you can always expand the area.
Yeah, I guess my example was more so like if your total addressable market is too small, then it's like you have to figure that out. But yeah, flower shops wasn't the best example.
Yeah, I mean, if you go too niche, like there's one vintage store in your town, then
Yeah.
obviously that's not a niche. But a general service, there's usually enough people. Plus, you can always go to another town or expand your search as well. You don't have to keep going in person, depending on your service, obviously. I'm
Yes.
talking about
If you're a plumber, you can't go to California if you're based in
Yeah,
New York City.
I'm basing everything off of web design. So
Yeah.
for web design, you don't need to see the person in person.
Yeah.
However, if you're like a photographer, then it's going to cost you more if you need to fly out or drive really far. So that's something to consider.
True. Cool. So bringing it back, how do you know when to hire somebody?
That's also very tricky. I would say if you're able to pay your bills and you have extra money on top of that, use that extra money for more marketing and to hire contractors or freelancers on like Fiverr or Upwork. But don't cheap out on it. Don't get like the $5 one. Get somebody who's like, again, for website design in the 20 to 30 range, 20 to 40 range. I mean, you can go higher if you have extra money, but don't get the $5 one from India who's not going to be able to grow the business with you. Get somebody who wants to grow it with you, which is usually that $20 to $40 an hour range for a designer specifically.
I would also add, which you know implicitly, where it's like figure out what the bottleneck is in the company and what kind of best bang for your buck to get you more time to grow the company or to do other stuff.
That's a really good point. I wish I said that. The first person you want to hire is whatever bottleneck you're having or whatever thing you absolutely hate doing. Although I made the mistake of outsourcing marketing, which I hate. At the time, I didn't really hate it. I was indifferent, but I was like, I just don't want to figure this out. So I wanted somebody else to figure it out. And that became a huge problem because I didn't have the foundation set up correctly. I just said we do websites. If I had it all figured out from the start, if I was like, we're doing websites for X industry with X person in mind, or 3 people. What I should have done was just nailed that down. I still don't have it nailed down, honestly.
Well, that adds another point where it's like, as a owner and founder, you should know every piece of the business, even if you're not an expert in it, just enough to be able to kind of smell the BS in someone else, and then bring in that person. They can be better than you at it, and they should be whoever you bring in at the top, let's say. But give yourself enough so that you at least know, like, okay, this is like good copy for marketing.
So there's like 6 main things you want to be worried about: legal, accounting, operations, the direction of the company, and then marketing and sales. I think that's 7 things, I guess. But the marketing and sales portion, nobody's going to do better than you, because you set up the management and operations and the services. So I would say the first thing you should delegate is the actual work for the client you're doing.
Okay.
So if you're a website designer, getting the client, figuring out how to get the client, you should do that. And then closing the client, you should do. But once the client's like paid you, hire a designer to actually do the project. But make sure they're a good designer. Don't throw like a low-end designer when you sell them a high-quality plan. But that's the easiest thing to delegate first. A lot of people, including me, I was more of I love the craft of designing websites, and I didn't want to do marketing. But if you're going to be the owner or founder of the company, you have to do everything. And unfortunately, that's the first thing you have to let go of. And if you're not comfortable letting go of that, you need to find a partner, either equity partner or another company that's going to do the sales and bring you all the work, which is also a fine setup. We have a lot of people like that where they're experts at the design or development or whatever, and we give them the work to do. And they're happy. They're way more happy doing that than they would be actually doing the sales or marketing. I kind of got lucky that I'm really happy doing the marketing and sales, but if I wasn't happy, the company would have gone a completely different direction.
And to go off that too, marketing is like, I've heard this so many times, it didn't click until living it a little more. Marketing is probably the most important. You could have the best thing, best service, best item, product, but you don't know, if no one knows about it and you can't market it, no one's going to buy it.
That's the problem with all the really good operators or really good craftsmen people. They want to start their own business, and they actually do provide better quality than the current businesses, but they just don't know how to get the people to buy their service.
Yeah. Cool. So obviously, outside of like revenue and such, what metrics would you look at to see if your company's successful? If you're growing, let's say, as you're expecting to, if you're hitting those kind of milestones, that you're not like plateauing or something.
That's a really hard question. Other than revenue?
I mean, revenue, I guess, is obviously an easier one, but I feel like, at least in bigger companies that I've seen, they have like, revenue could be going up. If the revenue is going up from a source that's not as reliable or something, then like they still don't.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be deceiving.
I don't know. That's really company specific.
So I guess an example might be like, if let's say you're bringing in a lot of sales, that's great. But if your turnover, it's not turnover. If people are
the close rate,
not close rate, people canceling the service.
That's churn, yeah.
Yeah, if your turn's very high, let's say it's 50% when you should be like 80 or 90%. 90% is really good.
Should the other way. Turn rate is how many people do cancel, not how many people stay.
Then what am I thinking of? The other one.
Customer success rate?
No, it's another word. It's escaping. Regardless, the percentage of customers that cancel your service, right? If that's going down, but yet you're bringing on a ton more customers, your revenues could technically be going up, but you're not able to retain them. Customer retention. If your customer retention is starting to fall, right?
So you could be selling more people, but you're losing more people than you're selling to. So
yeah, but on paper, your revenue is going up. So it's like, oh, cool.
Yeah, that's a really good one to measure, is how many people turn. Another one that you could measure is like how many reviews you're getting.
Okay.
How many customers are happy. You could do a survey. A lot of companies do this, hosting companies or anybody you open a ticket with. when they close the ticket, you usually get an email saying like, how happy are you with the service? And you put like a frowny face or a happy face. And you can measure like how many people put a frowny face, and if you check those tickets, you can see like what happened and figure out the cause and hopefully figure out how to prevent that from happening. So like for an example was one of our sites went down, the hosting company didn't really fix the issue, and then they took like an hour to restore it. I put a frowny face, so hopefully in the future they see that and they're like, okay, his site crashed, we took way too long to respond to it, and that we need to fix that. And then hopefully if that doesn't happen again, then I'll give them a happy face. But it's kind of hard because you don't really open tickets unless something went wrong.
Yeah, you don't open a ticket saying, "Hey, I just want to let you guys know, great job,
Yeah.
great job." Cool. So to wrap this up, then, this is a little maybe outside of like starting a business, but the next step is growing the business, right? So I guess like what any tips or advice on scaling it? Like, is there something that you've seen in your own business where you're like, oh, this piece prevented me from scaling efficiently that I didn't really think was going to be a problem, like in the beginning?
I think everybody's drilling this, but niching down.
Yeah.
So the problem is that when you start out, you're like, I just want to work with everybody and get some money in. But then as you start scaling, you realize that your systems and your sales strategies, you have to change them for every single situation. And you can't, you could try to delegate that to somebody, but like you'll find 2 or 3 people max that'll be able to keep up with the rate you were going at, and then you won't be able to scale from there. But if you say, we're targeting these people, again, from this specific industry, then you know exactly how to approach it. You know what their pain point is, you know how to talk to them, you know what to sell them. And if their pain point doesn't hit with your offer, that means they weren't ready to buy your service, or they're happy with whoever they're currently working with. So it just makes things so much easier. And then that's the part that I'm having a hard time with, is like, what marketing technique do we just put more money into that will generate more leads?
Yeah.
Or more sales? And that's something that once you figure that out, then it's a lot easier, because then you just throw more money into marketing and you hire more people and you just keep scaling it. But to get there, you need to figure out what that niche is, who that target audience is. That's something I wish I started from the start, but in retrospect, I couldn't have done that because I quit my job. I didn't have enough experience to keep, I didn't have enough time frame to learn all of that and pay myself without having to file bankruptcy or taking out a huge loan. And at that time, I didn't feel confident enough in my skills to take out a loan. So I was like, I'm fine with hitting 0 every month, but I don't want to start going under and then not be able to pay off a huge loan if I'm not able to get the company going better.
And if you took investment money in the beginning, you would have spent all of it without the knowledge of how to spend it, and now it works.
Exactly. So currently, if you gave me a ton of money, I still wouldn't really know where to put it. At the moment, I think operations is my best investment, and just keep learning marketing, so that for me, the operations is the main thing, because I want the team to keep running without me needing to keep jumping in to do damage control, or if we run out of money, just not have them do the work and me do the work. So that's something I'd like to keep going. So if you were to give me a loan now, I would probably just put it all aside to make sure we can meet payroll. But going forward, I want to figure out what else I can put money into to increase the amount of work we have.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks for watching, everyone.
Thank you. See you guys in the next one.